Today on the Spring Hills Podcast, Small Groups Director Jerilyn Valentine joins me in the green room and we discuss small group leadership. So if you're a small group leader or if you're considering becoming a small group leader, check this episode out. You can find out what it means to be a leader, goals we have for our leaders, and also the next steps to take if you're considering it. So check this conversation out with Small Groups Director Jerilyn Valentine. Jerilyn, first of all, I'll allow you to say hello.
Hello. Glad to be here.
If you don't know Jerilyn, you probably recognize her because she is on stage each weekend with me. She's one of the worship leaders here also. So she's on staff doing multiple things, which worship pastor, and then I don't know if you're small groups director. I'm not sure exactly what your title is.
I think that is my title. I don't know why there's a difference.
And then Julie is also an admin with the small groups. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So
you've
probably met Julie or Jerilyn at some point. They also both do other things. Julie with women's ministry, you with worship, and I mean it's kind of what everybody does here. We all have lots of different things we're doing.
Right.
But today, our purpose is we're going to talk about small group leaders specifically. But first of all, go ahead and give us an update on small groups. Like what's going to be going on for small groups, when are they coming up, and those kinds of things.
Yeah, well, we kind of pursued the question of whether or not to even have a small group semester this coming fall because we're still in a season of uncertainty. And, I think that I'm really excited that we kind of landed on the idea that small groups are so important and offering them even in the midst of kind of a crazy worldwide season that is still, I think it's a cool semester because leaders are stepping out in faith in a way that they aren't in a normal semester, in that, pretty much every group, unless they're going to be online, needs to have a backup plan. They need to be ready to interact with their group members and kind of be willing to take things 1 week at a time, which is awesome in that it pushes us outside of our comfort zone and it allows us to really trust God and be in prayer about some of the decisions we might make on the fly very quickly in other circumstances. So I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to be, we're calling it a hybrid semester. So there'll be groups that are here on campus. All our on-campus groups will be outside. But then we're allowing people to have groups in person in other locations and then also online on Zoom.
Awesome. I think it's actually, I don't know if this is where you're going with backup plans and things, but when this first happened back in March, we were in the middle of a semester.
Right.
And so people either switched to doing them online. Now, right. I was leading a basketball group. You can't play basketball. Well, you could play basketball online with like a video game or something, but you can't play basketball online. So the next week, we actually, a couple guys that I probably never really spoke to outside of our group, we got together, and I don't even know if we were supposed to, but we got together at my apartment complex where there's basketball hoops, and we just shot around and stuff, which is cool.
Yes.
But it was actually, it kind of formed a different bond of like getting together outside of the small group. So small groups are incredibly important because for many reasons, but one reason for me that they've been so great is just the relationships that you build within them. Right. Because it puts you in a small group.
Yes.
And you get to know some people that maybe you wouldn't have gotten to know. I've met a few people through basketball groups that I became buddies with, and now I am not just acquaintances, but friends with these guys and talk to them on a regular basis. So what are some other things that we look at as why we do small groups, why we decided to do small groups this semester instead of holding off?
Yeah. Well, I'm new to this role. Just in June, I came on my 1-year anniversary of being in the small groups leader role. But when I stepped in, we had sort of done, we're just launched a new paradigm of the way we do small groups. And we're trying to, really understand, why do small groups exist? And does our small group system reflect, strategically the why? Like, are we doing things in...
Yeah, I think we had only done maybe 2 semesters of small groups before you came here. Like I'm trying to think, maybe the fall and the spring. I don't know, just not many. So we were just getting used to it. It was kind of one of the things that we were all like finally in a rhythm of. And then it was like, bring Jerilyn in. Okay, here you go, and hand you the 100 groups or whatever it was. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. Yeah, so our answer to that question, why do small groups exist, is that because we weren't meant to do life alone. And God is a relational God, and he made us in his image as relational creatures. And if we are going to grow to become more like Christ or grow to be in a deeper relationship with him, we need to have relationships with each other. You can't, hypothetically, maybe it can be you just have an isolated relationship with God and it's really rich and robust. But I actually think that God designed us, in the Garden of Eden, when it was just God and Adam, he was like, not good. You need a helper, and brought about another human to be in relationship with. So I've been chuckling to myself lately because our systems that we had just recently put in place, and I literally had just felt like, I think I'm getting the hang of this. Now, all of a sudden, they aren't working as well because they weren't built around a pandemic.
We live in a different world than we
Right.
did 6 months ago, yeah.
Right, but I keep reminding myself that, our circumstances might break down our systems a little bit, but the purpose of small groups has not changed, in that it's for relationships. And that's what I'm going to be really encouraging leaders with this semester is, don't think of your group as, if I have 80% or more attendance every week, or if my group meets all 14 of the weeks in the semester. It's not going to be that. It's going to be, Lord, what do you have me doing? Like, what can I do? And then just being faithful to do that. And some of these groups, who knows, maybe they'll only meet 3-4 weeks. Maybe they'll meet more than that, but we really want to, just encourage people to sort of bring what they have, their time, their intentionality, their skills, their gifts to God, and then let him direct them in how to use them well.
Right. So today I want to specifically, we're going to actually do this a couple different times with some small group things. We're going to bring in a couple of small group leaders I forget if I scheduled it next week or the week after, and just talk about encouraging people to join small groups. But today the purpose is to encourage people that are maybe on the fence about being leaders to take the plunge. So let's talk about being leaders. How do people become a small group leader, first of all?
So good. So just this semester, we changed the language, and that was a really intentional change from small group leader training to small group leader orientation. And the reason for that was a lot of people would come and would get training and would just be like, okay, I'm ready to lead my group. And then, in the process of getting to know them a little better, it would be like, actually, becoming a small group leader isn't the right next step for you right now. And I say in this orientation that we do, I think that every single person, anyone can be a small group leader, in the sense that for every follower of Jesus, there'll come a time in their walk with the Lord where an appropriate next step for them is to become a small group leader, but that might not be right now. So we changed it to orientation also to let people know, if you come to an orientation, that's not a commitment to lead. And it's not a guarantee that you will be, permitted to lead, because we are trusting our people with our small group leaders. The way we talk about how they're sort of like mini pastors, not mini as in like less significant than Brett, but just they have a smaller group of people that they're being pastoral with. Mm-hmm. And so we take that really seriously. So we say anyone can be a small group leader, but at the same time, it might not be the right next step for you. So hopefully that can be an encouraging thing, where if you're on the fence about whether or not to become a small group leader, I would say don't be on the fence about whether or not to come to an orientation. Like if you're on the fence about it, to me, that says that God has sort of put this on your heart, and whether or not you lead a small group this semester, I think you need to be at an orientation. So come hear more about, all the sort of mechanics behind the scenes of small groups, and then understand that I will be partnering with you and helping you make that decision. You don't have to make it on your own.
Okay.
So you'll get a big...
I literally knew none of this.
Okay.
This is great. This is good information for me too, because I literally was just like, let's encourage people to be leaders. And you're like, no, let's just encourage them to come to orientation, and then we'll make that clear whether it's time for them to be a leader or not.
Well, and I like that because it's sort of like all of our leaders then have been commissioned. It's not just that they volunteered to lead a group. It's that, they went through a process that gave us what we need to know to really confidently say, go, make disciples as a leader. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, that's great. It is. I think that there's been as many, over 100 small groups and semesters, right?
Right. Yeah.
So the staff here, there's only... I don't know the exact number, but I can think of off the top of my head probably like 12 or 13 people on staff here.
Right.
And probably more than that, just with the 12 or 13 full-time. I'm not exactly sure, but it's a fairly small staff for the size of church that we are. Granted that right now we seem a bit smaller on the weekends just because we're limited on what we can be, the services we can be holding. My wife is texting me like crazy. I hope she's okay. No, she's fine. Okay, great. But my thought here is, each of us, we lead a small group in some capacity. We co-lead them, lead them. I've led 3 or 4 over the last year and a half or so. And I've led both spiritual groups where they're Bible studies, and I've led hobby groups because I've done a basketball group.
Right.
So what are the kind of groups, let's talk about that. Like, what are the kind of groups that people can be leaders of? Because maybe somebody's like, you know what, I'm not really ready to teach something.
Right.
But they might be a great leader for somebody to lead a group of, and we've done, archery and like I said,
Archery's
basketball.
Gonna happen this fall too.
There's
I'm
a knitting group and there's writing groups and there's been a bunch of stuff. So what other kind of groups can they be leaders of?
Well, we talk about how we're a church of small groups, not with small groups. And the reason that we talk that way is because we really confidently believe that every single person should be in a small group, like ideally every single semester. And so if small groups were all just, not just, I think Bible studies are amazing, but if every small group was a Bible study, there might be a chance that somebody is having a hard time fitting that into, their already very busy schedule. They've got a lot going on. They're maybe stressed, or maybe they've got a Bible study that they're already attending in a different capacity, or they really love their quiet time with the Lord one-on-one. And so we really wanted to make it so that we call it a free market approach. So we make it our small group leaders form their groups around their interests and abilities. So that may be leading a book of the Bible. But for a lot of people, it's like I kind of want to lead a meal prepping small group.
Oh,
so it's
great.
like, I'm not adding anything to my schedule in that way. I'm really actually just using my relationships in my church family to help me meet a goal I already have.
Yeah.
And same thing with basketball. You would play basketball, you would want to,
yes,
whether or not you had a small group. So really all you're doing is you're taking a passion you already have and doing it in relationship with our church family. And that's the whole point of small groups. So it is true that every single small group has some sort of spiritual component, some amount of time where they open God's word and connect about it. But that amount of time might be small. It might only be like 5 minutes. But that's important. But the relationship is the focus, not necessarily education about the Bible, because they get that from Pastor Brett in a really quality way on a weekly basis. So again, the relationships are what are important, and you can build those whether you're sitting in a circle talking or knitting or playing archery or walking a dog, so that's kind of why we do things the way we do them.
Yeah. And there's also co-leaders.
Yes,
so I want to talk about that too, because I have done a couple groups where I've co-led, specifically the basketball group. The first semester I did it. I co-led it with another guy, and then the next semester the schedule was going to be the same, but I wasn't going to be available as often. So I handed the group off to him and another guy and encouraged them to be leaders. Now I was around. I ended up being their coach for the semester too. So I was around and I was able to walk alongside them as they did it. Right. But the spiritual part of it was something that they were a little more nervous about. And it was like, okay, because we meet in the middle. We play basketball for an hour. We meet in the middle, share a short devotional, we pray for each other, and then we keep playing, So it is like a 10, 12 minute little devotional time, right?
Right.
And so what I was able to do though was I took it one week, and then they took it the next week, and then the other one took it the next week, and we traded off. So it wasn't as big of a pressure situation where it's like, okay, every Thursday I've got to have this devotional ready. And it was like, no, just be ready for your time in a couple weeks. And then they really did great. And now I honestly think had the pandemic not happened and we were able to just continue, I would have been like, you guys are ready to just take this. I'll still come and play, but this can be your group now. Because I think that they were prepared for it. But so if you're possibly feeling like you want to lead a group, but you'd feel more comfortable as co-leading, what does the co-leading look like? And also I wanted to mention coaches also. I kind of mentioned that in that.
Yeah.
But co-leading and coaches, you're not alone in your small group is my point as a leader. 100%. So what are some options there?
Yeah, you did exactly what I would have honored you for in front of all of our small group leaders.
Well, you told me to do
yourself.
That, by the way.
You're like, I did what you told me to do. Well, yeah, that we want our leaders to multiply themselves, and we talk about how the most important role of a small group leader specifically. So small groups are for relationships, but a leader's most important role is to help their group members take their next step in their walk with the Lord. And for that is a mission. It actually takes, maybe 5, 6, 7 weeks just to get to know someone well enough to identify their next step. And then a couple more weeks to sort of cast vision for that and help make sure that group member, is comfortable with what that might look like. And so historically we have had a group of people called coaches, where we really don't want small group leaders to ever feel like they're completely on their own. So it was split up mostly amongst the staff, that people had a staff member besides myself, because if it was just me and 150 leaders, then no one would get taken care of, because I wouldn't be able to do that. But we split it up amongst the staff. But we're kind of taking a different approach in the midst of this pandemic and this crazy season. And our staff already, like you mentioned, we're all carrying multiple roles. And we really don't want to just sort of phone it in for this coaching role. And so what we're doing this semester, instead of having coaching assignments, I'll be making myself available for roughly an hour on Zoom at different times throughout the week, each week.
Oh, cool. So, like office hours.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So
Professor Jer.
Exactly. So Professor Jer, I love that.
Wait, hold on. You don't have your PhD, so we can't call you doctor, but you have a master's, right?
Yeah.
So can we call you Master Jer?
Oh my word. I love it. No, I used to teach chemistry in college, so I got to be called Professor Valentine, which was
that's
really
cool.
fun. Yeah,
that sounds like a superhero.
Yes, that's my dream. Anyway, sorry.
Look out, Professor Valentine.
I need a cape, but
no capes.
No.
Oh, sorry. Pixar reference.
Yeah, so group leaders will be able to join me on Zoom, and that hour will change, so if one week you can't make it because it conflicts with your schedule, by the next week it should be something that would work for you. And then if you're like, 2-3 weeks in a row, you're like, I can't make it to the office hours thing or whatever, then you can reach out to me and we can meet one-on-one. I'm more than happy to do that. But that'll kind of make it so that instead of having coaching assignments with a different staff member, we're kind of going to collaboratively coach each other. So really it's going to be a space for small group leaders to not just meet with me, but to meet with each other and bring up obstacles that I imagine it would be really encouraging. It's encouraging to me when I hear a leader bring up an obstacle that I myself am facing as a small group leader, because I'm like, oh, I'm not, terrible at my job. This is just something that comes up as you're leading people. So,
well, I think in ministry, we learn as we go anyway.
Exactly,
especially right now. How many things have we had to just learn how to do?
Absolutely.
Over the last, there's people within our staff, we're learning how to video edit because that's so many things are going on. Like I hadn't edited videos since I was in college. So, oh man, like 13 years. Oh no. So I hadn't edited videos in so long, but when this came up, it was like, okay, Garett has done that in the past, so here, we're going to hand this to you. And so we're all learning things as we go. Right. So it's also the same with being small group leaders. So don't be afraid to ask questions.
Exactly.
We want you to ask questions.
Exactly.
If you have something and I've had this a few times where I've had small group leaders, and this is when I was assigned as a coach. Yeah. They would text me or email me, and I think our staff does a great job of being available to people to ask questions. And if you are, just so everybody knows, I can tell you that we all do make ourselves available. So if you do have questions or whatever, you can always be texting or emailing us. But learning alongside each other. So I don't want people to be scared to be a leader because they're going to be like, man, I don't want to be in charge of something because I'm not ready to do that. No, you've got people alongside you. There's other leaders. There's the director. I forget what we decided you were.
Oh, director.
Small group director. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The staff. And other people that are alongside you. So don't be scared to do it because of that. Now, I wanted to ask a question also with as far as, being in ministry. I think this comes up a little more often, but your ministry can be anywhere, right? So there's this idea of you're pouring into other people versus people, being poured into. Right. And there was this idea for me where it was like, okay, I don't want to just lead a small group. I also want to just be in a small group, and also be available, have myself available to be learning from somebody else. And so I've done that a few times too, where it's like I want to make sure that I'm just attending, which is hard to do on staff. Even with church, it's like it's hard to just attend church when you're on staff because you're working. It's different. So, but with small group leaders, I also want to encourage them that you kind of mentioned this a minute ago. When you're leading a small group, let your small group also pour into you, because that's happened numerous times with my groups. And specifically, when I co-led a basketball group, I talked with this guy, and it was very apparent. He was like, I'm feeling led to do this because I think this is going to be important for somebody. And it ended up like, he shared the story with our group. Since then, he was the one that needed it. He needed the group and to pray for him, to be alongside him, because he went through some really tough things. And so we were able to, even though he was a co-leader, we were pouring into him also. And he was encouraging other people with the idea that, look, this group is really great because we've been able to pray for each other. People have come alongside me. I've built friendships and relationships in this. So yeah, you can be poured into as a leader also, right?
Absolutely.
Am I on the right track with that?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
And I even say that in the orientation, we pray that your group members will grow during the semester, but we know undoubtedly that you as a leader will grow, and allowing people to minister to you is actually a skill. It's not something that people just naturally have. It takes humility. It takes, some level of self-awareness. And so I think it's really good when leaders set an example of being ministered to by reiterating, hey, when you said that really meant a lot to me, type of thing.
Yeah. I think we kind of started talking about what kind of groups there are there's spiritual groups, but I wanted to specifically mention some groups that have gone on. Just what are some of the more obscure, like ones, unexpected, let's call it that, unexpected groups, like, wow, I didn't think that could be a small group.
Right? Yeah.
I think there was a poker group at one time.
I don't know if there was.
I think that might have predated you. It might have been the first time we had one, and it was literally just guys that got together and just played poker.
Played with imaginary
poker yeah, they weren't really betting money, but it was.
I love it.
It was still, I'm pretty sure that happened. I could be wrong.
Funny.
But yeah, what are some of the more obscure groups that you've seen?
Well, you mentioned.
Is that an okay question to ask?
Course.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, of course. You mentioned the Brett Hansen's archery group.
Archery
so
group,
he's the one, for anyone who doesn't know, he's the one who is behind the camera with the stuff that we put up for worship music, and things like that. But he is awesome. He also leads he's an incredibly gifted artist, but then he also leads an archery small group, and that will be happening this fall if you're interested in that. And then I think my favorite group that actually had to stop because we went into shelter in place, but was a pottery small group. And he had really cool curriculum to go along with it, sort of the imagery of God being the potter and us being the clay. And so I thought that was a really cool. Coach. Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah,
that was
Eric. Yeah,
I think there's been there's bike riding groups, and there's definitely athletic groups, there knitting groups, crafts, writing. There's so many cool groups. I tried to do one. I ended up signing it up way too late. Like literally, I think the first weekend of signups had already happened, and then I was like, oh, this would be fun. And I tried to do one, and I was going to call it Mad About Movies.
Yes,
and just talk about movies and relate them to the Bible. And I had one person sign up. So my point with this, and the one person was ended up I was co-leading a group with him already.
Sure.
And so I ended up just being like, let's just hold off this time,
hang out,
and we'll do our we did a Bible study. I think we did one on James that semester. Cool. But my point with that is, how do people, if you sign up a group, if you're a leader, and you only get a few people to sign up,
right?
To not be discouraged, to not be concerned about the numbers of people attending or signing up for you, because a basketball group, it's opened up to 30 people because we have 2 courts, we can play 2 games at a time,
right?
So I consistently got 20 to 30 people signing up for my group.
Right.
But there's other groups that only get 2 or 3, and that doesn't mean your group is less important. So how can we encourage those people that have small groups,
right,
to still be excited and encouraged in their leadership?
Right. Absolutely. Well, and then, in life in general, we have to trust that the things that happen according to God's sovereignty, that God is in control. He knows what he's doing it, and he's working all the time, whether or not we see it or feel it. And I think that God is the one, we have to acknowledge God is the one who brings people to our groups. I have to acknowledge God is the one who brings small leaders to me. I would love to, meet a quota of small group leaders that'll just perfectly pastor our entire church family every semester, but I can do my best with what I have. But then ultimately God is the one. I love the scripture passage that talks about, you can till the soil and you can water it and you can plant the seed, but God is the one who makes it grow. So I would just encourage small group leaders that, if you have a small group and only 1 or 2 people sign up, first of all, we'll partner with you in deciding whether or not you should continue. If you might have an activity that really requires more, like you said, more than 1 or 2 people.
Yeah.
But then also, sometimes groups have 10, 15 people sign up, but then only 2, 3 people show up. Or like the first week there's a ton of people there, and then later they're not. And again, that's something where I'll come alongside you and we'll kind of try to figure out, if there's anything that can suggest to us why that happens. But it'll never be like, oh, wow, you failed as a small group leader because your attendance didn't stay up or you didn't have that many signups. That is absolutely not the way that I view it. I view it as like God is working. And then for my small group leaders, I'm usually thinking big picture for their ministry. So I'm not just interested in a small group leader who's going to lead for a semester. I would like our leaders to lead, ideally 2 out of the 3 semesters that we have every year. So I'm thinking big picture, like what can you learn from this semester that will make you a better small group leader next semester? And we celebrate that. We don't, mourn any like failures and only a couple people showed up or only a couple people signed up. It's like, no, we've learned things already that'll help you be a better small group leader in the future.
Yeah. That's great. I wanted to ask this also. What are some ways you have developed your own spiritual leadership as a small group leader? And I'm asking you this and actually asking myself this just because we've both been small group leaders. Right. But developing your own spiritual leadership as a small group leader.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because the small group that I'm going to be leading this semester is going to be called a small group for small group leaders.
Oh, cool.
So I'll be inviting small group leaders to meet with me each week, a group of them, and they don't have to be leading this semester in order to do that. And actually, they don't have to be a small group leader.
Would you encourage somebody that's considering being a small group leader to do that?
Absolutely. And then I was going to say, too, you don't even have to be a small group leader or ever plan to be a small group leader to join the group, but it is designed for small group leaders because we sort of took I had a really great curriculum from some missionaries in China that I absolutely love, but they sort of broke down the maturity steps of a Christian over 7 different steps. So, you start off not even as a seeker of God. We start off as guests, and like we learn to seek God, and then once you've become a Christian, and then being baptized and exploring your spiritual gifts, and at the later levels are leading others, and then also leading leaders. And I, in talking with a couple of people on staff, I even observed, I'm like, our staff has room to grow in leading leaders. Like, I certainly have room to grow.
I'm perfect. No, I'm just kidding.
I love it. But yeah, well, I mean, that's a good, we need to grow in these ways. And nobody on staff, even Brett, would say, I've arrived,
Right.
Like he's definitely on a level 7 in his walk with the Lord, but he's been through years of walking with God to get there. So this small group for small group leaders is going to be understanding each of those 7 stages and helping leaders with strategic ways to help someone else to go to the next stage. So it's like, how do you identify what stage someone's in? And then how do you encourage them to go in the next step? And so, that'll be good for small group leaders. It would also be good for identifying your own, where am I in these 7 steps? And they're not always perfectly chronological. But I'm really hopeful that I've already gotten some great interest from people I'm really excited about. And I'm hopeful that lots of people will enjoy and take advantage of that opportunity.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. That's really cool. Sounds like you've got a lot of different things that have come in this semester that are really going to be valuable for us.
Right. Yeah. It's actually a really cool semester to get to sort of test some things out because, you can't really mess anything up this semester, especially never any semester, but we're just going to be trying some things and then see what we learn for the spring.
Yeah. And I think that speaks a lot to our church too. We're always looking to grow. We're always looking to improve on things. And we never just get comfortable and stay where we're at just because we're like, oh, this is nice. No, so it might stretch you a little bit. You might be out of your comfort zone, but that's good because you're going to grow. And so let's just go very specifically. What are the next steps? So if I want to come to orientation, when is that? How do I sign up for it? Et cetera.
Yep. So you would go to springhills.org/groups, or you can just go to springhills.org and navigate towards small groups. It's under the ministries tab. And then when you pull up the small groups page, you'll see a list of the live options for orientation that are available. So at the same time that we're having growth track here and we are, sharing a meal, of course, like appropriately social distancing and all that, but we'll be meeting outside for every Sunday in August at 5:30. And the orientation will be less than an hour.
Here on campus, right?
Here on campus, correct. So here on campus, and it'll be less than an hour, even in grabbing food and all these different things. I really work to The orientation is just about understanding the philosophy of small groups, why they exist, and why we do them the way we do. What's
and
the
if they come to
strategy?
1 week, is that the only one they go to for the orientation, or is there a next step after that they're committing to?
Great question. Yeah. So they'll come to the orientation, and the orientation is where they decide whether or not they want to pursue becoming a leader this semester. So the next step is actually a one-on-one interview / meeting with me. And that's what's going to give me the tools for us to decide together whether or not this new leader should be a leader this semester. And then once you go through all those onboarding requirements in future semesters, you just automatically get to lead a group. But yeah, you would come to the orientation. There's the live options, and then there's also an on-demand option. So if you RSVP for the on-demand option, then we'll send you a YouTube link, and you just watch the video whenever works for you. And if you would like to do that one-on-one interview, that's where you would email us back and set up that appointment. And we can do that in person. We can do that over the phone. We can do that on Zoom, whatever works best for you. But that would be the next step, is to come to an orientation, consider a one-on-one interview with me, and you can do that by the orientation RSVP button at springhills.org.
Awesome. Or what about the app? Is it on the app as well?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, great. So you can download the Spring Hills app in the App Store. And I love whenever I talk about the app, how many times I say app. So I try to say it as many times as I can. So the Spring Hills app in the App Store, download that app and use that app to find all of the great app content on the Spring Hills app. Well, thank you, Jerilyn. If you have any other questions about small groups, you're here every weekend because we are on stage, so you can't come and jump on stage while we're leading worship to ask her questions. But I'm sure, like I said before, the staff, we make ourselves very available. You can email her, Jerilyn@springhills.org.
Right.
You can reach out to the staff and find out more about it. But this Sunday night at 5:30 on campus, you can sign up for it. Do they need to sign up? Is that?
I mean, if you were to just show up, I would still be really excited. But if you sign up, that's helpful, because then we make sure we have food for you.
Right.
And I'm waiting for you and excited when you get there.
Yeah, you're more prepared to know who's coming in.
Right.
Yeah, so sign up, springhills.org or the Spring Hills app. And also, if you want to do that on demand, you can sign up for it, and there's a YouTube link that you'll be sent to find out more information on it. So, thanks, Jared, for coming in and telling us a little bit more about leading small groups. Next week, we'll do one with small group leaders talking about the importance of joining a small group for the rest of the church. Because if you are not ready to be a leader, but you want to be part of small groups, that is also why we have them, is for people to be a part of them. And maybe your future is to be leading a small group, or maybe attending small groups is where you're at, and that's great, so that's why we have them. So, all right, thanks, Jared.
Thank you.